I want you to think about how hard you have worked to manifest money, the affirmations you repeated until your jaw was tired, the visualizations you forced until your head hurt, the vision boards, the scripting, the morning routines, the endless effort to feel rich when every part of you felt poor. And I want to tell you something that is going to be hard to hear. All of that effort is the reason it has not worked. Not because you did not try hard enough, because you tried at all. Effort is the problem. The struggle itself is the signal you keep sending to the law that says, I do not have this, so I must work to get it. And the law, reading your effort with perfect accuracy, keeps you exactly where the effort says you are, which is on the outside, reaching in. Today, I am going to teach you the opposite. I'm going to teach you how to actually treat the 3D, the physical world in front of you, so that money is no longer something you chase, but something that is handled. And the first thing you have to do is forget the affirmations, drop the effort, and understand why the harder you push, the further it runs. Let me show you exactly why affirmations fail, because almost everyone is doing them, and almost no one understands what they are actually broadcasting. You stand in front of the mirror and you say, I am wealthy, I am rich, money comes to me easily. And you say it again and again 100 times because someone told you repetition programs the subconscious. But listen to what is actually happening underneath the words. Why are you repeating it 100 times? Because you do not believe it. If you believed it, you would say it once or not at all, the way you do not stand in front of the mirror repeating, I have 2 hands, I have 2 hands, because it is simply true and needs no reinforcement. The very act of repeating I am wealthy 100 times is a confession, broadcast 100 times, that you are not. Each repetition is a tiny act of effort, and each act of effort affirms the gap between where you are and where you want to be. You are not programming wealth. You are rehearsing the lack, dressing it in the language of abundance, and wondering why the lack persists. The affirmation is effort, and effort is the announcement of absence. So if affirmations are effort and effort affirms lack, what is the alternative? The alternative is assumption, and assumption is the opposite of effort. An assumption is not something you repeat. It is something you accept. You do not affirm that you are sitting down when you are sitting down. You simply are. And from that quiet being, you act accordingly without strain. A real assumption of wealth feels exactly like that. It is not a chant. It is a settled, almost boring sense that the matter is handled, requiring no repetition because there is no gap to bridge. The man who has assumed wealth does not stand in the mirror affirming it, because to him it is as obvious and effortless as having 2 hands. This is the entire difference between the method that fails and the method that works. One is effort, trying to convince a self that does not believe. The other is a quiet acceptance that needs no convincing. You have been straining to affirm what you could simply assume, and the strain has been the very thing keeping it away. Now let me get to the heart of this, which is how you treat the 3D, because the way you relate to the physical world in front of you determines everything. Most people treat the 3D as the master. It is the boss. It is the authority. They wake up and consult it like a king consulting an oracle. What does the bank say? What do the bills say? What does the evidence command me to feel today? And whatever the 3D says, they obey. If the number is low, they feel low. If the bill is high, they feel fear. They have made the physical world their master, and they spend their entire lives taking orders from it. And here is the problem. The 3D is not the master. The 3D is the servant. It is the printout. It is the result. It is the obedient record of what you have already assumed. By treating the servant as the master, you have inverted the entire relationship, and you have handed your creative power to a thing that was only ever meant to take orders from you. The first move in treating the 3D correctly is to demote it, to take it off the throne where you placed it, and put it back in its proper place beneath your assumption, where it belongs. Understand what the 3D actually is, because once you see it clearly, you stop being afraid of it. The 3D is the past. Everything you see in your physical world right now, every number, every condition, every circumstance, is the hardened result of assumptions you already made, sometimes long ago. It is a photograph that has already been developed. It is yesterday, printed and hung on the wall of today. When you look at your bank balance and feel despair, you are despairing over a photograph of a thought you already had. You are arguing with a printout. You are trying to change the picture by staring at it, when the picture is only a record and has no power to change itself. This is why treating the 3D as the master is so insane once you see it. You are obeying a recording. You are taking life instructions from an echo. The correct way to treat the 3D is the way you would treat any old news, any finished record. You acknowledge it, you do not argue with it, and you absolutely do not let it tell you who you are now, because who you are now is not in the 3D yet. It has not been printed. So here is the first practical instruction in how to treat the 3D. Stop reacting to it. This is harder than it sounds, because reacting to the 3D is the most automatic thing you do. The bill comes and your stomach drops. The number is low and your mood collapses. Someone mentions money and you tense. Every one of those reactions is you obeying the 3D, treating it as the master, feeding it your emotional energy, and confirming the assumption that produced it. The wealthy relationship with the 3D is non-reaction. The bill comes and you handle it, but your state does not flinch. The number is low and you see it, but it does not have the authority to change who you are. This non-reaction is not suppression. You are not white-knuckling a fake calm. You simply understand that the 3D is a servant reporting the past, and you do not get emotional at a report. When you stop reacting to the 3D, you stop feeding it, and a 3D that is not fed by your reactions begins to lose its grip, because your reactions were the energy keeping the old assumption alive. I want to pause here and ask you something, because what comes next is the part that actually changes your relationship with money, and I do not want you to drift past it. If you can already feel the difference between effort and assumption, between obeying the 3D and ruling it, go to the pinned comment and write the word effortless, just that one word, effortless. It is you telling your own nervous system that you are putting down the struggle you have carried for years, and it tells me to keep teaching you the rest, because the next part is where I show you how to actually give the 3D its orders, how to treat it like the servant it is, so that money stops being something you chase and becomes something that simply arrives. So write it, effortless, and then stay with me. Here is how you give the 3D its orders, and it is not the way you think. You do not order the 3D with words. You do not stand in front of your bank account and command it to fill, the way you do not command a mirror to smile. The 3D, being a mirror, only reflects. It takes its orders from one place and one place only, which is your assumption, your state, your sense of who you are. So you give the 3D its orders by changing what it is reflecting. You become on the inside the person who has the money, and the 3D, being an obedient mirror, has no choice but to eventually reflect that new state back to you. This is why effort is so useless and so backwards. Effort is you trying to change the reflection by reaching into the mirror and pushing the image around. It cannot work. You change the reflection by changing the thing being reflected, which is you. The order you give the 3D is not a command spoken at it. It is a state assumed within you. Assume the state and the servant obeys. Strain against the reflection, and you accomplish nothing but exhausting yourself against glass. Let me make this concrete with how the wealthy actually relate to their physical world, because they do this without even knowing it is a technique. A wealthy person looks at a temporary dip in his accounts and feels almost nothing, because he does not treat that number as the truth about himself. He treats it as a passing weather report, a momentary reflection that will correct itself, because his sense of who he is does not live in the number. The number is the servant. He is the master. And so the number, sensing no fear, no reaction, no surrender of authority, behaves like a servant and corrects itself back to match the master's settled state. Meanwhile, the broke person looks at the same kind of dip and panics, hands the number all his authority, lets it dictate his entire emotional state, and in doing so confirms to the law that he is a man ruled by his conditions. The number, now treated as master, stays the master. Same event. Two completely opposite relationships with the 3D, producing two completely opposite financial lives. The wealth was never in the number. It was in the relationship to the number. Now I have to dismantle the biggest lie you were ever told about money, because it is the root of all the effort. You were taught that money requires hard work, that wealth is the reward for struggle, that the harder you grind, the more you deserve and the more you will receive. And this belief feels noble, it feels moral, it feels responsible, and it is keeping you poor. Because if you believe money requires struggle, then to manifest money, you will create struggle. And the struggle itself is the assumption of lack made physical. You will work and strain and exhaust yourself, And all of that effort broadcasts one message to the law, which is, money is hard for me. Money does not come easily to me. I have to fight for every dollar. And the law obeys and makes money hard for you, exactly as you have assumed. The wealthy do not believe money requires struggle. They believe deep down that money is easy, that it flows, that it is handled. And because they assume ease, they experience ease. The struggle was never the price of wealth. The struggle was the symptom of the assumption of lack, dressed up as virtue. This is what ignore the effort really means. It does not mean be lazy. It does not mean do nothing. It means stop using effort as your method of manifestation. Stop trying to force the feeling, force the belief, force the money. The action you take from a state of already having is completely different from the action you take from a state of desperately trying to get. The first is light, inspired, effortless, the natural movement of a person living his life. The second is heavy, forced, anxious, the frantic flailing of a person trying to escape lack. Same action perhaps on the outside, but radically different states underneath, producing radically different results. When you ignore the effort, you do not stop moving. You stop the inner straining. You assume the end, you release the how, and you let your actions flow from the calm of the already done rather than the panic of the not yet. The effortlessness is not in the body. It is in the state from which the body moves. Let me give you the actual practice that replaces affirmations, because I have told you to forget them, and I will not leave you with nothing. It is the state just before sleep. This is where you treat the 3D as a servant and give it its true orders, not with repetition but with a single felt scene. As you drift towards sleep in that drowsy place where effort becomes impossible anyway, you do not chant. You construct one short scene that implies the wealth is already yours, a friend congratulating you, the feeling of paying for something without checking the price, holding your phone, seeing a number, and feeling nothing but calm. And you feel that scene as real just once and you let yourself fall asleep inside it. Notice how different this is from affirmations. There is no repetition because there is no gap to hammer at. There is no effort because the state just before sleep dissolves effort. You are not trying to convince yourself. You are quietly assuming and handing that assumption to the subconscious in the only language it truly understands, which is the language of felt experience, not repeated words. One scene felt and believed does more than 10,000 affirmations strained against disbelief. Now let me show you why this is so much more powerful than the effort method, mechanically, so you trust it. Affirmations work at the level of the conscious mind, the surface, the part that argues and doubts. When you affirm I am wealthy, and the conscious mind hears it while staring at a low balance, the conscious mind objects, no you are not, and the objection cancels the affirmation, and you have accomplished nothing but reinforcing the argument. But the state just before sleep bypasses the conscious mind entirely. The doubting surface goes quiet. The objector falls asleep, and the felt assumption walks straight past him into the subconscious, where it is accepted without argument and begins to reshape your world from the inside. This is why effort fails and assumption succeeds. Effort fights the doubter head-on and loses. Assumption waits for the doubter to fall asleep and walks past him. You are trying to win an argument with your own disbelief, repeating affirmations louder and louder against an objection that always won. Stop arguing. Wait for the doubter to sleep and assume in the silence. So let me gather the whole teaching about how to treat the 3D into one clear posture you can carry. The 3D is not your master. It is your servant. It is the past, printed and reflected, a record with no power of its own. You stop obeying it. You stop reacting to it. You stop arguing with the reflection. You acknowledge what it shows without surrendering your identity to it, and you give it its true orders, not through effort or words, but by assuming on the inside the state of the one who already has what you want, so that the obedient mirror has no choice but to eventually reflect the new state back. You forget the affirmations because they are effort that affirms lack. You drop the struggle because struggle is the assumption of difficulty made physical, and you replace all of it with the effortless assumption of the end, planted quietly in the doorway of sleep, where the doubter cannot follow. Treat the servant like a servant and it will serve. Keep treating it like a master, and it will rule you faithfully until the day you take back the throne it never deserved. I want to go deeper into the non-reaction, because it is the hinge of this whole thing, and it is the hardest to actually live. When I say do not react to the 3D, the broke mind hears do not feel anything, become a robot, suppress everything. And that is not it at all. Non-reaction is not the absence of feeling. It is the refusal to let the 3D dictate your feeling. There is a vast difference. The suppressed person feels the fear and clamps down on it, which is just another form of effort, another struggle, and the clamped fear leaks out anyway and broadcasts lack. The non-reactive person does not need to suppress because the event simply does not carry the authority to frighten him in the first place. The bill arrives and there is nothing to suppress because his identity is not threatened by a number. This is the state you are growing toward. Not a forced calm laid over panic, but a genuine steadiness that comes from knowing at the root that the 3D is a servant and cannot actually touch who you are. In the beginning, you may have to choose the calm deliberately, and that is fine, but the goal is the day when the calm is not chosen because there is no longer anything to calm. Let me address the fear that is rising in some of you, the fear that says, if I stop reacting to my money problems, if I ignore the effort, I will become irresponsible. I will stop paying attention. Everything will fall apart. Look closely at that fear, because it is the voice of the old assumption defending itself. It believes that your anxiety is what holds your life together, that your worry is doing useful work, that if you stopped fearing your finances, the whole thing would collapse. But ask yourself honestly, what has all that anxiety actually produced? Has the worry made you rich? Has the fear paid a single bill? The reacting, the struggling, the effort, the anxiety, all of it has produced exactly the lack you are afraid of, because all of it has broadcast lack to the law. Your worry is not holding your life together. It is holding your poverty together. Releasing it is not irresponsible. Releasing it is the most responsible thing you can do, because it stops you from continuously manufacturing the very condition you fear. The calm man handles his finances better than the anxious man, not worse because his hands are steady and his mind is clear and he is not making decisions from panic. There is a subtle form of effort I have to warn you about because it traps even the people who understand everything I have said. It is the effort of checking. You assume the end, you treat the 3D as a servant, you do the scene before sleep, and then, in the morning, you check. You look at the balance to see if it worked. You scan your life for evidence that the assumption is taking hold, and that checking is effort, and it is the effort that confesses you do not believe. A man who knows a thing is done does not check on it constantly. You do not plant a seed and dig it up every morning to see if it has rooted. The checking is the digging, and the digging kills the seed. So part of treating the 3D correctly is to stop interrogating it for proof. You give the order through your assumption, and then you leave the servant alone to carry it out, the way you would give an instruction to a competent servant, and then go about your life rather than hovering over his shoulder, demanding to see progress every 5 minutes. The hovering, the checking, the scanning for proof, all of it is effort, all of it is doubt, and all of it slows the very thing you are waiting for. Let me give you the measure of progress that does not depend on the 3D at all, because if you keep checking the 3D for proof, you will quit before it turns. The real measure is your reaction. In the beginning, the 3D rules you completely. A low number drops you instantly. A bill spikes your fear. A money worry hijacks your whole day. As you learn to treat the 3D as a servant, you will notice the same events arrive and move you less. You feel the old pull, but you do not fall. Later, the same events arrive and barely register because they no longer match the master you have become, and you discard them as the servant's chatter. That growing steadiness, that shrinking reaction, is the only proof you need that the relationship is changing. And here is the beautiful part. The moment the 3D can no longer move you is the moment it has fully become your servant. And a servant that has fully submitted begins to reflect your true state, which means the outer change is no longer far off. Watch your reactions, not your balance. The day the 3D loses its power to disturb you is the day it has agreed to obey you. I want to come back to the affirmations one more time, because I know some of you have invested years in them and it is hard to let go. I am not telling you that words have no power. I am telling you that words used as effort against your own disbelief have no power, and in fact reinforce the disbelief. There is a world of difference between repeating "I am wealthy" 100 times to convince a self that is staring at lack, and quietly speaking from the assumption of wealth, because it is simply what you now believe. The wealthy person might say, "Money is easy for me," and it lands because it is spoken from a state that already holds it, with no effort, no repetition, no straining against doubt. The same words from the broke person repeated frantically, do nothing because they are spoken at a state that does not hold them, as effort, as argument. It was never the words that failed you. It was the effort underneath them, the desperate repetition that confessed the very lack you were trying to cover. Drop the repetition, drop the convincing, and let whatever you say flow from a settled assumption rather than a frantic attempt to install one. So here is the truth that ties this entire thing together, and I want it to land with full weight. You have been working so hard to manifest money because you believed that effort was the bridge between you and wealth. But effort was never the bridge. Effort was the wall. Every strain, every forced affirmation, every anxious check of the balance, every struggle to feel rich while feeling poor, was a brick in the wall between you and the thing you wanted, because every one of them broadcast the assumption of lack. The bridge was always effortlessness, the quiet assumption of the end, the calm treatment of the 3D as a servant rather than a master, the willingness to plant the seed and leave it alone. The people who manifest money easily are not working harder than you. They are working less, straining less, reacting less, and assuming more. They have stopped trying to earn what they only ever needed to assume, and that is the invitation in front of you right now. To put down the effort you have carried for years, to forget the affirmations that only deepened the gap, and to finally treat the 3D the way it was always meant to be treated, as the obedient reflection of a state you are free to choose. There is one more form of effort I have to expose because it is the most disguised of all, and it wears the mask of patience. It is the effort of waiting. You assume the end, you treat the 3D well, and then you wait. And the waiting becomes a kind of straining, a constant low hum of when is it coming, how much longer, is it working yet? That waiting is effort. It is the mind leaning forward, reaching into the future, and the leaning itself is a confession that the thing has not arrived, which is the assumption of lack wearing the costume of patience. The man who truly treats the 3D as a servant does not wait for it the way an anxious person waits for a late bus, checking the clock, craning his neck down the road. He has given the order, and he has moved on, genuinely moved on, his attention back in his life because the matter is settled and a settled matter does not occupy the mind. So part of dropping the effort is to drop the waiting. Not to wait patiently, which is still waiting, but to stop waiting altogether, to assume the thing is done and then to forget about it the way you forget about a letter you have already mailed. You do not stand by the mailbox of the universe, checking every hour to see if your manifestation has been processed. You drop the letter and you walk away, and the dropping and the walking away are the whole art. Let me speak about time, because impatience is effort and it deserves its own dismantling. You want the money to come fast, and the wanting it fast is itself a strain that slows it. Speed is not your concern. The how is not your concern, and neither is the when. The moment you demand a timeline, you have stepped back into effort, because you are trying to control the part of the process that was never yours to control. The 3D as a servant will deliver, but it delivers on its own schedule, through a bridge of incidents that has to be built, and your job is not to stand over it tapping your foot. Your job is to assume and release. And here is the paradox that the effortless ones understand. The less you demand the speed, the faster it tends to come because your demand for speed is itself the resistance. The man who needs it now desperately, urgently, is broadcasting a need so loud that it confirms his lack and pushes the thing away. The man who has assumed it is done and genuinely does not care when it shows up, because for him it is already real, removes all resistance, and the servant, unobstructed, moves quickly. Stop rushing it. Rushing is effort. Rushing is the loud announcement that you do not have it yet. I want to expose the effort hidden in comparison, because this one quietly destroys people. You look at someone who has the money, the life, the ease, and you feel that pang, that mixture of longing and lack, and then you try harder, you strain more, you redouble your effort to catch up. Every act of comparison is an act of effort, because it begins from the assumption that they have it and you do not, that there is a gap, a distance, a race you are losing. And from that assumption, no amount of straining will close the gap, because the straining confirms the gap. The wealthy do not compare because comparison is the mindset of one who believes there is not enough to go around, that another's having means his own lacking. The man who treats the 3D as a servant knows that the supply is not out there to be competed for. It is generated from within, from his own assumption, and another man's wealth takes nothing from him and his own wealth is not a prize he has to win against others. So when you catch yourself comparing, recognize it as effort, as the assumption of lack and competition, and return to the only thing that matters, which is your own assumed state, generated from within, owing nothing to what anyone else has. There is a trap that catches the people who are almost there, and I have to name it because it is the subtlest effort of all. It is the effort of trying to believe. You hear all of this, you understand that you must assume rather than affirm, and so you sit down and you try to believe. You strain to feel the assumption. You push yourself to be certain. And the trying to believe is itself effort, and the effort confesses the doubt. You cannot force belief any more than you can force sleep. The harder you try to fall asleep, the more awake you become, because the trying is the opposite of the surrender that sleep requires. Assumption is the same. You do not force it, you allow it. You relax into it, the way you relax into sleep, by stopping the effort, by letting go of the struggle to believe and simply assuming quietly, casually, the way you assume 1,000 things every day without straining to believe them. The assumption that works is not the one you forced with all your might. It is the one you allowed with no might at all, the one so calm and casual that it slipped in without resistance, because there was no effort to create resistance against it. Let me give you a picture of a single day lived this way, because the principle has to become a way of moving through ordinary hours. You wake, and the broke self reaches for the phone to check the balance, to consult the master. You do not. You let the 3D stay where it belongs, beneath you, unconsulted, and you begin the day as a man for whom money is handled. An expense comes up, and instead of the drop in the stomach, instead of the reaction that feeds the master, you handle it with steady hands and let it pass. A servant's report, nothing more. You catch yourself starting to repeat an affirmation out of old habit, and you smile and drop it, because you no longer need to convince yourself of what you have assumed. You notice the urge to check whether it is working, and you let the urge go, leaving the seed in the ground. You notice a flash of comparison when you see someone with more, and you release it, returning to your own generated state. And at night, with no effort at all in the doorway of sleep, you feel one calm scene of the life already yours, and you let it go and fall asleep. That is a day of treating the 3D as a servant, not a day of straining to manifest, a day of quietly assuming and effortlessly living, while the servant, unobstructed and unafraid, goes to work building the reflection of the master you have become. And here is the deepest thing I can leave you with about effort, the thing underneath all of it. Effort comes from the belief that it is up to you to make it happen, that you are the one who must generate the money through the force of your striving. But the law does not work that way. You are not the one who builds the bridge of incidents. You are not the one who arranges the circumstances and moves the people and opens the doors. That is the work of the deeper power, the subconscious, the law itself, and it is infinitely more capable than your straining conscious mind. Your only job, the entire extent of your responsibility, is to assume the end and to maintain the state. The making it happen is not yours. When you understand this, the effort dissolves, because you finally see that you were straining to do a job that was never yours, exhausting yourself trying to carry a weight that the law was always meant to carry. You set the assumption. The power does the building. Your effort was never required, and in fact it interfered, like a man so anxious to help that he keeps grabbing the tools out of the hands of a master craftsman. Put down the tools. Let the craftsman work. Your striving was never building the house, it was only getting in the way. So here is what I'm asking you to do starting today, and notice how little it asks of you. Stop repeating affirmations at your disbelief. Stop reacting to the 3D as though it were the master of your fate. Stop checking and scanning and digging up the seed. And tonight, in the doorway of sleep, plant one calm scene of the life already handled and let it go, and leave the servant to its work. Treat the low number as old news with no authority. Treat the bill as a thing to handle, not a verdict to obey. And carry yourself through your days as a person for whom money is easy. Not because you are forcing the feeling, but because you have finally understood that ease was always the truth and struggle was always the lie. If this reached you, tell me in the comments what effort you're putting down, what struggle you are finally releasing, written as if you have already let it go. Not I am trying to stop forcing it, but I have stopped. It is handled, it is easy now. And stay close to this channel, because I am going to keep teaching you how to live this effortlessly, day by day, until money is no longer something you chase with strain, but something your servant, the 3D, brings to you because you finally learned how to treat it. Forget the affirmations, ignore the effort, and let the world serve the master you have decided to become.